political editor Mike Flannery covered George Ryan for many years, from the state capitol to prison and beyond. He is joining us now this afternoon, and listening to Paris's report just reminds you of his legacy, what he accomplished. I want to hear from you, though, Mike. When you think of George Ryan, what do you think he would and should be remembered for?
Well, you know, he had a gruff exterior, Sylvia. He could harumph with the best of them. But he, in addition to being bipartisan, he did some big and bold bipartisan things, a big public works project, multi-billion-dollar project that really helped to boost Mayor Richard M. Daley in the 90s. There were projects at the CTA and the Chicago Public Schools in Chicago, as well as in the suburbs and downstate. And it was actually the Illinois Farm Bureau pushing for years to sell soybean and corn and wheat to Cuba that prompted Ryan to become the first ever U.S. sitting governor to go meet with Fidel Castro. I went with him twice to Cuba on those trips. One of them famously involved a meeting for 2.5 hours with Fidel Castro where we ran out of videotape because Castro just wouldn't shut up. He wanted to keep talking to us. There was also that I put in mind back when he was Illinois Speaker of the House. Ryan, in a much more conservative posture back in those days, made some parliamentary rulings that made it more difficult and ultimately impossible for supporters of the Equal Rights Amendment to pass it and add it to the U.S. Constitution. The failure here in Illinois, Sylvia and Dane, was a key to the failure of the ERA nationwide.
Mike, how would you say, you knew him for many years, how did he change the most over the years? One would certainly think of his views on capital punishment, right?
Well, you know, he really, once he became governor, I think he saw that the path to doing big and bold things had to be bipartisan because there were so many Democrats in the General Assembly. He was going to have to work things out with Mayor Daley, with Speaker Madigan, with the Democrats in the state Senate. On the death penalty, he told me that the thing that changed his heart on that issue was being governor and then having the first execution come before him. He allowed it to go forward, but he said he was haunted by all the stories and the exposés of wrongful convictions in Illinois. And that, Dane, is what ultimately prompted him to empty death row. He said one mistake was too many on death row.
Yeah, he was very forward on that, no doubt. But he was also an old school politician. And, you know, those of us who've lived and worked in Chicago for a while, if you did a story on him and he didn't necessarily agree with you, he would call. He would say, I want to speak, you know, and I know you have had that experience with him yourself. That really kind of defined, he just would come to the source.
He would. He would give me a piece of his mind. You know, Sylvia, there was, just before he left office, he had a dinner that we dubbed the Last Supper with me and a couple of other local reporters down in the governor's private dining room at the executive mansion in Springfield. And, you know, it was all off the record. And, you know, without getting into details, he let us have it and let me have it on some things he felt that I had done unfairly. But in the end, he said, you know, we need journalism. We need reporters covering the state government to make things work. And he did recognize that. For all of his unhappiness about specific stories, he recognized the role we play.
Well, George Ryan,
I think you used the right word there, Mike, gruff, but he did have a warm touch about him.
He did. All right. Thanks for joining us this afternoon and sharing your memories. We appreciate it. Always great to see you, Mike Flannery.
Yeah.
Great to see you guys, too.
Thanks, Mike.